Welcome everyone to Insight Meditation Community of Charlotte, everybody here and everybody on Zoom. I'm Clyde, one of the 6 Dharma leaders here at IMC Charlotte. Welcome. Take a moment to kind of stretch, look around, see who's here. Well, tonight we start our annual Summer Sutra series. And of course, the first night it's nice to know what a sutta is and explain what a sutta is and why we do a sutta series. Well, in this tradition, we draw from what they call the Pali Canon. And Pali was not necessarily the word the Buddha spoke, but it was the word that eventually everything was kind of recorded in from that standpoint. He could have been speaking something else, but because I think a lot of the places where he lived, they had different dialects and everything. But it's called the Pali Canon. It's the Tipitaka, the 3 Baskets. And this is the collection of the primary Pali language texts which form the foundation of the Theravada Buddhism, which is the section of, it's the oldest section. It's called the Doctrine of the Elders. And so this Pali Canon are the first teachings. And there's 3 divisions within here. There's the Vinaya Pitaka, which is the rules for the nuns and the monks. There's the Abhidhamma Pitaka, which is a Buddhist analysis of mind and mental processes. It takes every mind moment and it analyzes it. It's very detailed. We don't do very much with that. It's more for people that are really the scholars. The 3rd division is the Sutta Pitaka, and that's where we get this. This is the collection of the discourses. You can think of the Sutta as a discourse, attributed to the Buddha and a few of his closest disciples, containing all the central teachings of Theravada Buddhism. So there's Sutta, the Sutta Pitaka. Now within the Sutta Pitaka, there are 5 books or Nikayas. There's the Digna Nikaya, which is the long discourses. That's 34 suttas. Then we have the Majjhima Nikaya, which is right here. This is the middle length discourses. This is the Samyutta Nikaya, the collected discourses. And then this is the This is a Guttara Nikaya, and this is the numerical or further factor discourses. So I don't have the first one. And then the 5th book is the Kanduka Nikaya. It's short books. You might have heard of the Dhammapada or the Jakarta Tales. There's different little books in there. So these are the books here, and then there's the 4th one, which I don't have. But we teach a lot out of, you'll hear it's called the Majjhima Nikaya, which is this one, the middle length discourses. There's a lot of sutras. There's over 10,000 suttas. You guys didn't get to see all the books on Zoom. But a lot of them you'll find because there's the long, short, and numbered version of them. So they repeat themselves a lot over and over and over. Or the long version will have more than the short version has. Or they'll be grouped like this. So they repeat themselves a lot. So what we do during this time period is each night for the next 4, starting tonight, and the next 3 nights, the Dharma will be picking a sutta and kind of going over it with you. What he got out of it, the person got out of it, he or she got out of it. If you're interested in these, you don't have to buy the book. You can go to a place called Sutta Central, this on the website, or Access to Insight, and you can find most of this information. So that's why we go here. You'll hear us teach out of here. When we quote something from the Buddha, or thus I've heard, it's coming from, this is the suttas that they're coming from, the discourses. So tonight, I picked one from the Digna Nikaya, which is the one I don't have. It's Digna Nikaya number 16. It's the Mahabharinamana Sutta. It's the last year of the Buddha. And it is the longest discourse in the collection. So we're going to be here till like 10, 11 o'clock. Just sit down. We'll work it in. It is the longest, but I've heard about it and I've pulled pieces from it, but I've never read the whole thing. And so I thought, well, let me just read and see what this is about. What is this discourse about? It's really the last months and around his death. The Buddha spent his last months as he had spent his life, walking and teaching across the Ganges plain. Now an old man, he was about 80 years old when this. He was unsparing about his condition, comparing his worn body to an old cart held together with straps. Knowing the end was near, he continued to instruct his community as he traveled toward Kusinara. Kusinara is where he died. And so I'm not going to go over the whole thing. What he did, when I read through this, he moved around a lot. Over this time, there were like at least 15 different places he stayed. He would say, I'm going to be here. And then he'd say, okay, I've been here long enough. Ananda was his assistant. Let's go to the next. And I think these were like villages. It's the last year. He would see the villages. So within that last year, he did spend 3 months of the rains period would have been in one place. But the rest of the time, he was traveling around. It's just amazing. It was like he was going here, going there. And then he did some teaching. He interacted with, he taught to some of the teachings he did, and he wasn't by himself. He had his followers going with him from place to place. And they found a place, and they had to go to alms to be fed. He taught everything like conditions of a nation's welfare. He taught about the fruits of an immoral and moral life. He taught about how to maintain the welfare of the bhikkhus. He talked about, and he met with various monks. He talked with different monks. He talked with different local dignitaries came to visit him and see him during this time. He heard him talk about being in a grove, someone's grove or something. They would come and see him and bring him food. Now, within this sutta, there are also a lot of gods and deities and things happening. And that's okay. We're going to hear about some things happening, and what I do with that is I look at what's the message. What is the message around when he talks about the gods and the deities? And there's a lot of them in here. In fact, there's at one point where he describes he crosses the Ganges just by waving his hand. Him and his whole group of people were across the Ganges just by him waving his hand. So those are some of the things. He talked a whole bunch of different things. So I kind of went in on what are some of the teachings. He also did some teachings because his disciples were there. And part of his process toward end of life was having taught everything he felt he needed to teach. So some of the things he taught, these are some of the things that he actually did teach. He taught to his disciples, such is virtue, such is concentration, such is understanding. Concentration fortified with virtue brings great benefits and great fruits. Understanding fortified with concentration brings great benefits and great fruits. The heart fortified with understanding becomes completely liberated from taints, from the taint of sensual desire, the taint of being, the taint of views, the taint of ignorance. He taught this one just about everywhere he went. And if you heard that was the 3 steps of the Noble Eightfold Path. Virtue is the ethical piece. Concentration is the mindfulness piece and concentration. And then understanding is the wisdom piece. That is the Noble Eightfold Path. That's what he's talking about there. Another one. Then he addressed his bhikkhus thus, bhikkhus being the male monks. It is through not discovering, not penetrating the 4 truths that brought you and I, for the 4 truths, that both you and I have had to travel and trudge through this long round. What for? They are the noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of origin of suffering, the noble truth of sensation of suffering, and the noble truth of the way leading to the sensation of suffering. But when these 4 noble truths are discovered and penetrated, craving for being is cut off, craving that leads to being is abolished, and there is no renewal of being. These are the 4 noble truths. So a lot of what he taught during this last year are things that he's been teaching for 40 years. But he's still teaching these. So that's the 4 noble truths. And then he says, how should they live mindfully and fully aware? The bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as a body, ardent, fully aware, mindful. He abides contemplating his feelings as feelings. He contemplates abiding. He abides contemplating consciousness as consciousness. He abides contemplating mental objects as mental objects. Ardent, fully aware, mindful. That's the Satipatthana Sutta. That's the 4 foundations of mindfulness. He was teaching that over and over and over. Those I was kind of familiar with those. He did one thing I liked. He says they were talking about that people were asking what's going to happen if he goes. What's going to happen, or what about this? What about that? There was a lot of interaction between him and Ananda during this time period about his life and what was going on. Ananda was very upset during this whole time because he kind of knew what was going to happen. The Buddha said, "The Dharma I have taught has no secret and public versions. There is no teacher's closed fist about good things here." That means he's told you everything you need to end your suffering. This is it. There's nothing else hidden. There's no secret, thing you have to find from somebody or something. I've taught you everything. There's no teacher's closed fist. "Indeed, bhikkhus, I declare this to you. It is in the nature of all formations to dissolve, attain perfection through diligence." And we're going to hear more about that later. So he did continue teaching, like I said, as he traveled during this time too, because he had his followers who would go to these villages, and this is what he would be teaching. So let's now go to the final 3 months of his life. And we know it's the final 3 months because of what are the things that are said in here. Him and Ananda one day they're in the Vasali, the Kapala shrine in Vasali. So they go to this shrine, him and just Ananda together, and Ananda goes away for a little bit, and the Buddha's there, and Mara, the evil one, appears. Now Mara is a personification of greed, hatred, and delusion. That's when you'll hear Mara comes, and that's just greed, hatred, and delusion. It's what we've been talking about in here. These are the 3 defilements. But this is the Mara. The evil one said, let the Blessed One, the Buddha, attain final nibbana now. Now is the time. The Buddha said, "You may rest, evil one. 3 months from now, the perfect one will attain final nibbana." So he knew it was going to be 3 months that he was going to die. This is when the Buddha relinquished the will to live. And what happened was there was a great earthquake. And there was a great earthquake, fearful and hair-raising, and the drums of heaven resounded. So this is one of the things that happened. And Buddha coming back. He came back and said, "There's been this earthquake. What's going on? What's happening?" And it was interesting because in the Sutta, the Buddha explains there are 8 reasons for earthquakes. And only the first one had to do with wind and the earth and the sky and all that stuff, all nature. The next 7 had to do with when a bhikkhu attains understanding, when the Buddha was born, when the Buddha gave up the will to live. All of them were around these things. The other 7 reasons for earthquakes was around something to do with the Buddha or a bhikkhu. That's an arhat, someone becoming an arhat. That was interesting. So this is 3 months out. Then he travels some more, keeps traveling on. At the town of Pava, he accepted a meal from Kunda, a metal worker, which they included a dish, and they're not really sure what the dish was. It's translated differently. It could be a tender cut of pork or a kind of mushroom or truffle. And in the sutta, it said that when the Buddha got it, the one that I read, it said that it was a piece of pork, got it. Said he said, "Don't give this to any of the other people. Go bury it." And Kunda went and buried it, and he gave other food to other people. And then, soon after eating, the Buddha was struck by a severe illness with sharp pains traditionally identified as dysentery. So, and he had been, earlier in the sutta, he had been sick and been okay. He was sick for something else. But later on, he told Ananda and them, he says, he refused to let Kunda be blamed for this. He said he instructed that Kunda should be told that his offering was a great good fortune, declaring that of all meals, 2 were supremely meritorious. There was milk rice from Sujata before his awakening. When Buddha first started out, he went through a lot of these very aesthetic, very austere pieces where he almost starved himself to death. And right before he's about to die, the milk lady brought him a little bowl of milk rice or something and brought him back. And that was the first meal. And then the second meal, the last meal from Kunda, the one that preceded his final liberation. So that was, he knew this was going to happen, but he said, no, this is the most meritorious meal I'm going to have. So then he goes on to Kusinara. They go to Kusinara. And he goes to, and Ananda here knows what's going on. He's been upset. He says, Ananda, please make a couch ready for me with his head to the north between the 2 solid trees. I am tired and I will lie down. He placed himself in the lying sleeping pose on his right side, with one foot overlapping the other, mindful and fully aware. So he's laid down beside these 2 trees. Now here's another thing: these trees are not in season. They should not be in bloom now. This is what he said. What happens? The Blessed One said to the Venerable Ananda, the twin solid trees are quite covered with blossoms, though it is not the season. They scatter and sprinkle and strew them on the Perfect One's body out of veneration for him. And heavenly mandavrava flowers and heavenly sandalwood powder fall from the sky and are scattered and sprinkled and strewn over the Perfect One's body out of veneration for him. And heavenly music is played and heavenly songs are sung in the sky out of veneration for him. But this is not how the Perfect One is honored, respected, or venerated. Rather, it is when monks and nuns, or the man or woman follower who lives according to the Dhamma, who enters upon the perfect way, who walks in the Dharma, that honors, respects, reveres, and venerates a perfect one, with the highest veneration of all. Therefore, Ananda, trained thus, we will live in the way of the Dharma, entering upon the proper way and walking in the Dharma. So by walking and living in the Dharma is the highest way that you can venerate the Buddha. There, in his final hours, he gave his last instructions. He consoled the grieving Ananda, reminded him that everything dear to us is subject to separation. He talks about the very truth of impermanence the Buddha had spent his life teaching. He ordained a last disciple, the wanderer Subhadha, and then he made provision for the future of the community. He said the Dharma and the discipline he had taught would be their teacher after his passing. There would be no central authority. He said this, and he says this to everyone: be islands unto yourselves, refuges unto yourselves, seeking no external refuge. With the Dharma as your island, the Dharma as your refuge, seeking no other refuge. And that's what it talks about when he talks, this is an experiential practice. You learn the Dharma, you read the Dharma, you practice the Dharma, and that's what guides you. Now, teachers, the books, they're all important, but it's really your practice, your refuge. He then assembled the monks 3 times, and he asked 3 times whether anyone had any last doubt or questions. All were silent. Then he spoke his last words. All conditioned things are of the nature to decay. Strive on with diligence. The lesson of impermanence. The text describes Buddha then passing serenely through the deep meditative absorptions, the jhanas. He went all the way up to the 8th or 9th one and back down, and then back up to the 9th one. And then from there he entered parinibbana, final nirvana. Now, parinibbana, just to explain what that is, and that's the title of the sutta. At his enlightenment, the Buddha had already attained nirvana. That's the extinguishing of greed, hatred, and delusion, the 3 defilements, while still alive. Nirvana with remainder. The remainder being the body and life. And at death, the last remainder entered, and he entered nirvana without remainder. That's the para nirvana. Without remainder, there's nothing left. And no further rebirth. This is not annihilation and not a soul going to heaven. It is the final ending of the whole process of becoming, the cycle of samsara extinguished for good. So following his death, there was another earthquake. There was some more screaming. There was more going on. The gods and deities were around. And then the gods were standing around, and then Sakka, the ruler of the gods, uttered this stanza. Formations are impermanent. Their very nature is to rise and fall. There is none arises but must cease. True bliss lies in their stealing. And then, following his death, his remains were cremated, and his ashes and bones were divided among his followers. And they took those and they made the stupas, the little monuments. And there were 8 or 9 of them made, so that people could come and use those as pilgrims. And that was the end of the Buddha's life.